The first time I held my niece, I felt something I'd never expected. She was tiny, perfect, her skin still flushed from the trauma of birth. She had my sister's nose, my sister's chin, but her eyes, those deep, searching eyes, were looking at me like she knew me. Like she'd been listening to my heartbeat for 9 months and recognized the rhythm. My sister, Lauren, stood beside the hospital bed, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for this miracle." I handed the baby to her, watching Lauren's arms close around her daughter. I thought that was the beginning of our shared story. I had no idea it was the beginning of the end. Let me go back.
I'm Claire.
I'm 34, a graphic designer, single, and until 2 years ago, I never thought much about having children of my own. My sister, Lauren, is 5 years older. She's been married to Mark for 12 years. They tried everything to have a baby, fertility treatments, IVF, adoption agencies, even a failed surrogacy attempt with a stranger that ended in heartbreak and legal fees. By the time they came to me, they were out of options and out of hope. Lauren called me on a Tuesday night, her voice raw with tears.
"We're done," she said.
"We can't do this anymore. We're going to start thinking about a life without children." I listened, my heart breaking for her. She'd wanted to be a mother since we were kids, playing with dolls, naming our imaginary children. The thought of her giving up that dream was unbearable. The idea came to me slowly, over the course of a week. I was healthy. I was young enough. I had no plans for children of my own in the immediate future. And I loved my sister more than anyone in the world. So I offered. I'll never forget her face when I said it. We were at our kitchen table, drinking tea, and I just blurted it out. "I'll be your surrogate." She stared at me for a long moment, then burst into tears. Mark, who'd been standing in the doorway, sat down heavily, his own eyes wet. "You can't be serious," Lauren whispered. That's everything. That's 9 months. That's your body. That's my niece or nephew." I interrupted. "That's you becoming a mother. That's worth anything." The next few months were a blur of medical tests, legal consultations, and emotional conversations. We found a fertility clinic, worked with a reproductive endocrinologist, and began the process of IVF using Lauren's eggs and Mark's sperm. I was just the vessel, the carrier, the oven for their bun. That's how I thought of it. That's how they thought of it. We were a team, united by love and a shared goal. The contract was Lauren's idea. "We should get everything in writing," she said early on, "just to protect everyone." I agreed, naively thinking it was a formality, a way to make sure we were all on the same page. We found a lawyer who specialized in reproductive law, a woman named Margaret who walked us through every clause with clinical precision. The contract was straightforward. I would carry the pregnancy to term, receive medical expenses, and a modest compensation for lost wages and inconvenience. Upon birth, I would relinquish all parental rights, and Lauren and Mark would become the legal parents. There was a clause about what would happen if something went wrong, if the baby had medical issues, if I had complications, if the unthinkable happened. We signed it together, Lauren and Mark on one side, me on the other, with Margaret as witness. We hugged afterward, celebrating the beginning of our journey. The first IVF transfer failed. I was devastated, even though I knew the odds. Lauren held me as I cried, comforting me when I was supposed to be comforting her. The second transfer worked. I'll never forget the phone call from the clinic, the nurse's cheerful voice telling me the blood test was positive. I drove straight to Lauren's house, burst through the door, and we screamed and cried and jumped up and down like children. The pregnancy was surprisingly easy. I was healthy, active, and oddly content. I felt the baby kick for the first time at 18 weeks, a tiny flutter that grew into kicks and rolls and hiccups that became the rhythm of my days. I talked to her, sang to her, told her stories about her mother and father and the family waiting for her. I never thought of her as mine. She was always Lauren's daughter, just growing inside me for safekeeping. Lauren and Mark were at every appointment. They felt her kick, talked to her through my belly, decorated the nursery with love and anticipation. We were a unit, bonded by this incredible thing we were doing together. I thought nothing could break that bond. I was wrong. The shift started around month 7. It was subtle at first, a change in tone, a new distance. Lauren stopped calling as often. When she came to appointments, she seemed less engaged, more focused on the medical details than on me. Mark was the same, but Lauren was different. I told myself she was just nervous. The baby was coming. Everything was about to change. It was normal to be anxious. Then came the conversation that should have warned me. We were at her house discussing the birth plan when she said something that stopped me cold. When the baby's born, we'd prefer if you didn't hold her right away. We want the first bonding to be with us. I blinked. Of course. Whatever you're comfortable with. It's just, we've read that babies bond with the person who holds them first. And we want that to be us. You understand. I understood. But it hurt. I'd been carrying this child for 7 months. I'd felt her grow, move, respond to my voice. And now I was being told to step back, to be a stranger at the moment of her birth. I pushed the hurt down.
It wasn't about me.
It was about Lauren and Mark and their daughter. I was just the vessel. I repeated that to myself like a mantra. The due date approached. The nursery was ready. The baby's shower had been thrown. Everything was in place. And then, 2 weeks before the scheduled C-section, Lauren called me. "We need to talk about the contract," she said. Her voice was strange, tight, controlled. "What about it?" "We've been thinking. With everything that's happened, all the emotion, we think it might be better if we revisit some of the terms." I felt a chill. Revisit them how? Just some things. Access, maybe. We want to make sure we're all comfortable with the arrangement going forward. Going forward. After the birth. She was already planning for after, and her plans didn't seem to include me. I called Margaret, the lawyer. She listened calmly, then said something I'll never forget. "Claire, the contract is ironclad. It protects your rights as well as theirs. If they try to change it now, so close to the birth, that's a red flag. Don't agree to anything without talking to me first." I didn't agree to anything. But I also didn't confront Lauren. I told myself it was just nerves, just pre-baby jitters. Everything would be fine once the baby was here. I was so wrong. The C-section was scheduled for a Thursday morning. I arrived at the hospital at 5 a.m., nervous and excited. Lauren and Mark were already there, pacing in the waiting room. Lauren hugged me, but it felt stiff, perfunctory. Mark barely met my eyes. The surgery went smoothly. I was awake, numb from the waist down, watching as the doctors worked. And then I heard it, the most beautiful sound in the world.
A cry. Her cry.
The doctor held her up, a tiny, perfect creature covered in vernix and wonder. "It's a girl," she announced. They cleaned her, wrapped her, and then Lauren was holding her. I watched from the operating table, tears streaming down my face as my sister met her daughter for the first time. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. But when they wheeled me into recovery, Lauren didn't bring the baby to me. She didn't even come to my room. Hours passed. I asked a nurse to check on them. She came back with a strange look. "The baby's fine. Mom and Dad are in their room. They said they'd visit later." Later never came.
Not that day.
Not the next day. On the 3rd day, a social worker appeared at my door. "Claire, we need to talk about the custody arrangement." "So, what happens next? Why won't Lauren let me see the baby? And what does the contract actually say about my rights? Let me know your theories in the comments." The social worker's name was Diane. She was kind, professional, and clearly uncomfortable with the conversation she'd been sent to have. "Your sister has requested that you not have contact with the baby at this time," she said, reading from a notepad. "She cites concerns about your emotional state and worries that contact might confuse the child or complicate the bonding process." I stared at her, the words not quite registering. My emotional state? I just gave birth to her child. I carried her for 9 months. I'm not a stranger. I'm her aunt. Her mother's sister. Diane nodded sympathetically. "I understand. But legally, until the contract is finalized and parental rights are formally transferred, Your sister has some discretion. Discretion. That was the word they used. My sister had discretion to decide whether I could hold the baby I'd carried. The baby whose heartbeat I'd listened to every night, whose kicks had woken me at 3 a.m., whose hiccups had become a familiar rhythm in my days. That baby was 3 floors away, and I couldn't see her. I called Margaret, my lawyer, my voice shaking with a mixture of exhaustion and rage. She listened without interrupting, then asked me to send her the contract and any communication I'd had with Lauren since the birth. I'll look into it, she said. But Claire, you need to prepare yourself. Surrogacy laws are complicated, and they vary by state. In some places, the surrogate has rights until they're formally terminated. In others, the intended parents have rights from the moment of birth. It depends on what your contract says and how it was written. I thought the contract was clear. I carry, they parent. That's it. The contract is clear about the end result, but it may not be clear about the transition period, the hours and days immediately after birth. That's often a gray area, and gray areas are where disputes happen. I hung up and lay in my hospital bed, staring at the ceiling. The physical pain from the C-section was nothing compared to the ache in my chest. I'd given my sister everything, my body, my time, my health, and she was using it to build a wall between me and her daughter. On the 4th day, I was discharged. Lauren and Mark didn't come to say goodbye. A nurse wheeled me to the curb, where my friend Jen waited to drive me home. I didn't even get to see the baby one last time. The next week was a blur of physical recovery and emotional chaos. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I just lay in my apartment, staring at the walls, replaying every moment of the last 9 months, searching for the sign I'd missed. When had Lauren changed? When had our shared dream become her private property? Margaret called on day 8. I've reviewed the contract and spoken with Lauren's lawyer. There's good news and bad news. Give me the bad news first. The contract is solid, but it has a standard clause that gives the intended parents full parental authority from the moment of birth. Lauren's lawyer is arguing that this includes the right to determine who has contact with the child. They're using it to keep you away. And the good news? The good news is that the contract also has a clause requiring good faith cooperation between all parties. And it specifically mentions your role as the child's aunt, stating that the parties intend for the child to have a relationship with the surrogate and her extended family, subject to the parents' reasonable discretion. The key word is reasonable. What Lauren is doing, cutting you out completely with no explanation, no timeline, no compromise, that's not reasonable. A court could see it as a breach of good faith. A court? You're talking about going to court against my sister? I'm talking about protecting your rights. If you want to have a relationship with that child, you may need to fight for it. The question is, are you willing to fight? I thought about it for a long moment. The baby, my niece, was innocent in all of this. She didn't know about contracts or disputes or family drama. All she knew was that she'd spent 9 months listening to my voice, feeling my heartbeat, being part of my body. And now I was gone. Was that fair to her? I'm willing to fight, I said. Not against Lauren. For the baby.
She deserves to know me.
She deserves to have a relationship with the person who carried her. Margaret sighed. Okay, then we need to start with a formal demand letter. We'll ask for reasonable visitation, supervised at first if they want, and we'll put them on notice that we're prepared to go to court if they refuse. It might scare them into negotiating. The letter went out the next day. I waited, my stomach in knots, for a response. It came 3 days later. Not from Lauren directly, but from her lawyer. A single page, formal and cold. Dear MS.
Webb.
Our clients have received your demand for visitation. They wish to make clear that they have no intention of facilitating a relationship between you and their daughter at this time. They believe that any contact would be confusing for the child and disruptive to their family. They ask that you respect their wishes and cease all attempts at contact. If you persist in seeking visitation, they will have no choice but to seek a restraining order to protect their family from harassment. Sincerely, lawyer's name. A restraining order. My sister was threatening to get a restraining order against me. The woman I'd carried a baby for, The woman whose hand I'd held through every fertility treatment, the woman who'd cried on my shoulder when the first transfer failed, she was painting me as a harasser, a threat to her family. I broke down then. For the first time since the birth, I let myself feel the full weight of the betrayal. I sobbed for hours, alone in my apartment, while the baby I'd carried grew another day older without me. When I finally stopped crying, I called Margaret. They're threatening a restraining order. I saw the letter. It's a bluff. They don't have grounds for a restraining order. You haven't harassed anyone. You haven't threatened anyone. You haven't even contacted them directly since the birth. But it shows how far they're willing to go. They're not going to negotiate. They're going to fight. Then we fight back. Margaret filed a motion in family court the next week. It asked for two things. First, a declaration that Lauren's refusal to allow contact was unreasonable and a breach of good faith. Second, an order granting me supervised visitation to be expanded over time as the child grew. The motion was served to Lauren and Mark on a Thursday. I know because Margaret called me an hour later. They're furious. Lauren called my office screaming. Said you were trying to steal her baby, that you were unstable, that you'd always been jealous of her. It's not pretty. Did she say anything about the baby?
No.
And that's the problem. She's not thinking about the baby. She's thinking about winning. About controlling the narrative. About punishing you for existing. I sat with that for a long moment. My sister, the woman I'd loved my whole life, was treating me like an enemy. Because I'd done exactly what she'd asked me to do. Because I'd given her a child. Because I'd loved that child enough to want to be part of her life. Is there any way back from this? I asked. Margaret was quiet. I don't know, Claire. That's not a legal question. That's a human one. And humans are unpredictable. All I can do is help you protect your rights. The rest is up to you, and to her. The court date was set for 6 weeks out. 6 weeks of waiting, wondering, hoping. 6 weeks of staring at photos of the baby, photos Lauren had posted on social media, of all places, as if daring me to look. She was beautiful. Perfect. Growing every day without me. I started writing her letters. Not to send, just for myself. Letters telling her about my life, my hopes for her, the story of how she came to be. I wrote about the day I found out I was pregnant, the first time I felt her kick, the songs I sang to her in the dark. I wrote about her mother, too, the good parts, the Lauren I used to know. I wanted her to have that, someday, even if I never got to give it to her in person. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, running through every possible outcome in my head. The best case, the judge grants me visitation, and over time, Lauren and I find a way to coexist. The worst case, the judge rules against me, and I never see my niece again. Somewhere in between, a compromise, a negotiation, a slow thaw. I didn't know which one would happen. I only knew that I had to try. The family court courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined. Wood-paneled, fluorescent lit, with a bench that seemed too ordinary for a place where lives were decided. Lauren and Mark sat on the other side of the aisle, flanked by their lawyer. A different one now, someone sharper and more expensive than the one who'd sent the threatening letter. Lauren didn't look at me. She stared straight ahead, her jaw tight, her hands clasped in her lap. Mark glanced over once, then quickly away. I sat with Margaret, my heart pounding so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. The bailiff called the court to order. Judge Patricia Morrison entered, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. The hearing began with opening statements. Lauren's lawyer, a man named Harrison who looked like he billed by the syllable, painted me as a threat. Your Honor, the respondents have a newborn child and a clear legal agreement. The petitioner, despite signing a contract relinquishing all parental rights, is now attempting to insert herself into their family against their wishes. This is precisely the kind of situation surrogacy contracts are designed to prevent. Margaret's turn. Your Honor, my client is not seeking parental rights. She is seeking what the contract itself contemplated, a reasonable relationship with her niece, subject to the parent's discretion. The parent's discretion, however, must be exercised in good faith. Complete exclusion, with no justification other than we don't want her involved, is not good faith. It's punishment, and it harms the child, who is being denied a relationship with a loving aunt who carried her for 9 months. Judge Morrison nodded, made a note, then called the first witness, me. I walked to the stand, my legs unsteady. The clerk swore me in. Margaret approached. Claire, can you describe your relationship with your sister before the surrogacy? We were close. Very close. She was my best friend. I trusted her completely. And why did you agree to be a surrogate? Because she was desperate. She tried everything: fertility treatments, adoption, a failed surrogacy with a stranger. She was heartbroken. I loved her. I wanted to help. Did you have any conversations about your role after the birth?
Yes.
We talked about it many times. We both agreed I would be part of the baby's life. Not as a parent, as an aunt. A special aunt. Lauren said she wanted the baby to know me, to know where she came from, to have that connection. Did you put that in the contract? It's in the contract. The clause about good faith cooperation and the child's relationship with the surrogate and her extended family. That came from our conversations. Harrison cross-examined aggressively. Ms. Webb, you signed a contract agreeing to relinquish all parental rights, correct? Yes. And you understood that meant you would have no legal claim to the child? Yes. And yet here you are in court, asking for visitation. Isn't that exactly what the contract was meant to prevent? I took a breath. I'm not asking for parental rights. I'm asking for what the contract also promised, a relationship with my niece. The contract says my sister has to exercise her discretion reasonably. Cutting me out completely, with no explanation, no compromise, no timeline, that's not reasonable. That's cruel. Harrison pressed on, but I held my ground. By the time I stepped down, I felt wrung out but steady. Next, Margaret called an expert witness, a child psychologist named Dr. Ellen Vance, who specialized in surrogacy and family dynamics. She testified about the importance of continuity for children born through surrogacy. Babies in utero recognize their surrogate's voice, her heartbeat, her rhythms, Dr. Vance explained. There's research suggesting that a sudden, complete separation can be experienced as a loss, even if the child doesn't consciously remember it. Maintaining some form of contact, appropriate, supervised, consistent, can actually help the child integrate their origins in a healthy way. Harrison objected, arguing it was speculative. Judge Morrison overruled him. Then it was Lauren's turn. She walked to the stand with the confidence I remembered from 1,000 family gatherings, the older sister who always knew best, who always had the upper hand. But when she started speaking, something shifted. Lauren, can you explain why you've refused to allow your sister any contact with the baby? Harrison asked. Lauren's voice was steady, rehearsed. Because it's what's best for our family. She's been through a lot. The pregnancy was hard on her, emotionally. We're worried that contact would confuse the baby and make it harder for us to bond as a family. Has Claire done anything to threaten you or the baby?
No, but we're trying to be proactive.
We don't want to wait until something happens. Margaret cross-examined. Ms. Webb, you say the pregnancy was hard on Claire, emotionally. Can you give specific examples? Lauren hesitated. She was emotional. Crying a lot. Getting attached. Getting attached to the baby she was carrying?
Yes.
Which is exactly why we need boundaries. But you encouraged that attachment during the pregnancy, didn't you? You brought her to appointments. You let her feel the baby kick. You talked about her being a special aunt. That was before. Things changed. What changed? Lauren's composure cracked, just slightly. She started acting like the baby was hers. Like she had rights. Like she was the mother. Did she ever say she was the mother?
No.
But we could feel it. The way she talked about her pregnancy, her baby. It was uncomfortable. So, you decided to cut her out completely, without discussion, without warning, while she was recovering from major surgery? It was what was best for our family. Margaret paused, letting the words hang. Then she asked, Ms. Webb, Have you read the contract recently? Specifically the clause about good faith cooperation. Yes. And do you believe that cutting your sister out completely, with no contact at all, constitutes good faith? Lauren's eyes flickered. We're acting in good faith. We're protecting our child. That's not what I asked. I asked if you believe your actions meet the legal standard of good faith as defined in the contract. Lauren looked at her lawyer, then back at Margaret. I think we're doing what's right. Margaret nodded, thanked her, and sat down. The final witness was Mark. He was nervous, uncomfortable, clearly caught between his wife and his own conscience. Under Harrison's direct examination, he echoed Lauren's concerns. But under Margaret's cross, something interesting happened. Mr. Webb, did you and your wife discuss how Claire would be involved after the birth?
Yes.
We talked about it. And what did you discuss? That she'd be, the aunt. See the baby at holidays, birthdays, that kind of thing. So, you did plan for her to have a relationship with a child?
Yes.
At first. What changed? Mark glanced at Lauren, then away. My wife, she got nervous. After the birth, she was really emotional. Hormones probably. She started worrying that Claire would try to take the baby. I didn't think she would, but Lauren was insistent. Did you try to talk to Claire about these concerns?
No.
Lauren said it was better to just create distance. And you went along with that? Mark's voice dropped. I go along with whatever my wife decides. It's easier that way. The words hung in the air. Easier that way. Not better, not right, easier. When the testimony ended, Judge Morrison looked at both sides. This is a difficult case. Not because the law is unclear, but because the emotions are so raw. I'm going to take this under advisement and issue a ruling within 48 hours. In the meantime, I strongly encourage both parties to consider mediation. A court-ordered solution is rarely as good as one you reach yourselves. The hearing ended. Lauren and Mark left without a word. I sat in the courtroom, drained, until Margaret touched my arm. You did well. Now we wait. I waited. 48 hours that felt like 48 years. I barely slept, barely ate, just stared at my phone, willing it to ring. On the second day, at 4 p.m., Margaret called. The ruling is in. Judge Morrison is ordering supervised visitation once a month for 3 months, then reevaluation. She cited the contract's good faith clause and the expert testimony about continuity. Lauren has to comply. I burst into tears. Relief, joy, fear, all of it mixed together. But Margaret wasn't finished. There's more. The judge also ordered family therapy.
For you and Lauren.
She said, and I'm quoting, "This family has been fractured by fear and misunderstanding. Before this child grows up in the middle of a war, the adults need to learn to communicate." Family therapy. With Lauren, the woman who tried to erase me from her daughter's life. Can I do this? I asked. I don't know, Margaret said honestly. That's up to you. But the judge is giving you a chance. A chance to rebuild, or at least to find a way to coexist. What you do with it is your choice. So, what happens in that therapy room? Can Lauren and I find a way back to each other? Or is the damage too deep? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Next is the first session, and the first time I hold my niece since the day she was born.
Subscribe.
The first supervised visit was scheduled for a Saturday at 10 a.m. The location, a neutral family center, the kind of place where divorced parents exchange children and estranged families attempt reconciliation. I arrived early, my hands sweating, my heart pounding. I'd brought a gift, a small stuffed elephant I'd bought months before the birth, when I still believed everything would be fine. The social worker, a calm woman named Patricia, met me in the waiting room. "They're here," she said gently. "The baby is with them. Are you ready, I nodded, not trusting my voice. Ready or not, this was happening. I was about to see my niece for the first time in 2 months. The visitation room was bright and cheerful, filled with toys and soft furniture. Lauren and Mark sat on a couch against the far wall, the baby in Lauren's arms. She was bigger now, 2 months old, round-cheeked and alert, her eyes taking in the new surroundings. Lauren looked at me as I entered, her expression unreadable. Mark gave a small, awkward nod. Patricia guided me to a chair across from them. "This is a supervised visit," she reminded us all. "I'll be in the room the entire time. The goal is for Claire to have positive, low-stress contact with the baby. We'll start slow." I sat down, my eyes fixed on the baby. On Lily. That was her name. Lauren had announced it on social media weeks ago. Lily Grace. A beautiful name for a beautiful child.
Lily, whisperat. Surrogate.
The baby's eyes swiveled toward my voice. For a long moment, she just stared at me, her expression serious, searching. Then, slowly, her face broke into a gummy smile. She kicked her legs, reaching toward me with tiny, grasping hands. Lauren's arms tightened around her. Patricia noticed. "Mom, it's okay. You can let her interact." Lauren hesitated, then loosened her grip. Lily leaned forward, still reaching for me. My heart cracked open. "Can I hold her?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Lauren looked at Mark, then at Patricia, then back at me. For a terrifying moment, I thought she'd say no. But then, slowly, reluctantly, she stood and walked toward me. She placed Lily in my arms with the care of someone handing over a priceless artifact. And then I was holding her. My niece. The baby I'd carried, dreamed about, fought for. She was warm and solid and perfect, her tiny hand wrapping around my finger with a grip that said, "I remember you." "Hi, Lily," I whispered, tears streaming down my face.
Surrogate.
"Auntie Claire is here." Lily cooed, kicking her legs, utterly content in my arms. It was the most natural thing in the world. It was exactly where I was supposed to be. The visit lasted an hour. I held Lily, talked to her, sang her the same songs I'd sung when she was inside me. She recognized them. I could tell by the way her eyes lit up, the way she calmed in my arms. Lauren watched from the couch, her face a mixture of emotions I couldn't read. Mark occasionally made small talk, asking about my work, the weather, anything to fill the silence. When the hour ended, I handed Lily back to Lauren. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. "Same time next week," Patricia reminded us. "And don't forget, the court has also ordered family therapy. Your first session is Tuesday." Family therapy. With Lauren. I'd been dreading it more than the visits. Tuesday came. The therapist's office was neutral ground, a comfortable space with soft lighting and squishy chairs.
Dr.
Morrison, no relation to the judge, was a middle-aged woman with a calm, steady presence. She introduced herself, explained the ground rules, then looked at both of us. "Claire, Lauren, we're here because a judge believes this family can heal. I don't know if that's true, but I know that the only way to find out is to talk. Really talk. Not at each other, but with each other. Are you willing to try?" Lauren nodded stiffly. I nodded too. "Then let's start with the obvious question. Lauren, why did you cut Claire out?" Lauren's jaw tightened. "I already explained in court. We needed space. We needed to bond as a family without interference." "Interference," I repeated. "Is that what you think I was doing? Interfering?" "You were attached, Claire. You acted like the baby was yours. It scared me. I carried her for 9 months. Of course I was attached. But I never once said she was mine. I never once tried to take her. I just wanted to be part of her life, like we talked about, like you promised." Lauren's eyes flashed. "Promises change when you're holding your baby and the woman who gave birth to her is staring at her like she's the mother." "Because I love her." "Is that a crime? Loving your daughter?" "It is when it feels like you're trying to take her from me." The words hung in the air, raw and ugly.
Dr.
Morrison let them settle, then spoke quietly. "Lauren, when you say trying to take her from me, what do you mean? Has Claire ever said or done anything to suggest she wants custody?" Lauren hesitated.
No.
But I could feel it. The way she looked at Lily, the way she talked about her pregnancy. "Claire, can you respond to that?" I took a breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "Lauren, I never wanted to take Lily from you. I never wanted to be her mother. I wanted to be her aunt. A special aunt. Yes, the aunt who carried her, who loved her before she was born. But always an aunt. Never a mother. You are her mother. That was the deal, from day one. Then why does it feel like you're competing with me? Because you're treating me like a threat instead of a sister. Because you cut me out without a word, without a conversation, without giving me a chance to prove that I could be exactly what we agreed I'd be. You didn't just protect your family, you destroyed ours. Lauren's face crumpled. For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw my sister. The real one. The one I'd grown up with. The one who'd held me when our father died. The one who'd cried on my shoulder when her first marriage fell apart. She was in there, buried under layers of fear and defensiveness. I was scared, she whispered. So scared. After everything. The failed attempts, the miscarriage, the years of hoping, finally having her, holding her. I couldn't lose her. And you were so close, so connected. I thought if I didn't create distance, she'd bond with you more than me. I thought I'd lose her to you. The tears came then, for both of us. We sat in that therapist's office, two sisters who'd loved each other their whole lives, crying over the fear that had torn them apart. I would never have taken her from you, I said, my voice breaking. Never. She's yours. She's always been yours. I just wanted to love her too. As her aunt. As your sister. As part of your family. Lauren looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in months. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. The therapy session ended with more tears and the smallest glimmer of hope.
Dr.
Morrison scheduled another session for the following week and encouraged us to keep talking, keep listening, keep trying. The second supervised visit was different. Lauren was still guarded, but the wall had cracks. She let me hold Lily longer. She even smiled once, when Lily grabbed my nose and laughed. Mark, for his part, seemed relieved. He'd been caught in the middle, and the thaw made him visibly more comfortable. But healing isn't linear. After the visit, as we walked to our cars, Lauren said something that reminded me how far we still had to go. Next time, maybe we can do the visit at my house. So Lily can be in her own environment. It was an olive branch. A small one. But it was something. So, what happens next? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. The final part is about the long road to healing and the moment when everything changes.
Subscribe.
The invitation to Lauren's house came 6 weeks after that first therapy session. A text, simple and tentative. Want to come over Saturday? Lily has a new toy she wants to show you. I stared at the message for a long time, my heart pounding. 6 weeks of therapy, 6 weeks of supervised visits, 6 weeks of slowly, painfully rebuilding. And now this, an invitation to her home. Lily's home. The place where she took her first steps, said her first words, became a person. I texted back. I'd love that. And then I sat on my couch and cried, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of a door finally opening instead of slamming shut. The drive to Lauren's house felt like a journey through time. I'd driven this road hundreds of times before, to family dinners, to holidays, to the baby shower that felt like a lifetime ago. But this time was different. This time, I wasn't sure what I'd find on the other side. Lauren met me at the door. She looked nervous, fidgeting with her hands. Thanks for coming, she said quietly. Thanks for inviting me. She led me inside. The house was the same, but different. Baby-proofed, filled with new furniture, toys scattered across the living room floor. And in the middle of it all, sitting on a play mat surrounded by stuffed animals, was Lily. She was 7 months old now. A person. She looked up when I entered, her eyes widening, and then recognition. A huge, gummy smile spread across her face. She kicked her legs and reached for me. I looked at Lauren. She nodded, a small, tentative smile on her face. I crossed the room and sat on the floor next to Lily. She grabbed my finger, shoved it in her mouth, and laughed. It was the most ordinary, beautiful moment in the world. She's been babbling Claire all week, Lauren said from the doorway. Or something like it. We've been practicing. My eyes filled with tears. You have? I want her to know you. Really know you. not just as a visitor but as family, as her aunt. Mark appeared behind Lauren, a dish towel in his hands. Dinner's almost ready. Hope you're hungry. Dinner. Together. Like a family. We ate at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd planned the surrogacy, where Lauren had cried on my shoulder, where we'd signed the first version of the contract. Lily sat in a high chair between us, smearing sweet potatoes on her face and babbling happily. It was chaotic and messy and absolutely perfect. After dinner, Lauren and I did the dishes while Mark put Lily to bed. For a long time, we worked in silence. Then Lauren spoke. I've been seeing a therapist. On my own, I mean, not just the family sessions. I looked at her. That's good. That's really good. I had to figure out why I did what I did. Why I was so scared. Why I pushed you away. She scrubbed a plate, not looking at me. It wasn't really about you.
It was about me.
About all the years of failing, of trying and losing, of feeling like my body was broken. When Lily finally came, I couldn't handle the thought of anyone else having a claim to her. Even you. Especially you, because you're the one who made it possible. I never wanted a claim, I said quietly. I just wanted a connection. I know that now. I didn't then. I was so deep in my own fear that I couldn't see anything else. She finally looked at me, her eyes wet. I'm so sorry, Claire. For everything. For the contract, for the restraining order threat, for the months of silence. For making you fight for something you should never have had to fight for. I put down the dish I was holding and pulled her into a hug. We stood there in the kitchen, two sisters holding each other, crying for everything we'd lost and everything we might still save. I forgive you, I whispered. Not because what you did was okay, but because you're my sister. And because Lily deserves a family that isn't broken. We talked for hours after that. About the past, about the future, about what our relationship would look like going forward. We agreed to tear up the old contract. Not legally, but symbolically. The new one would be unwritten, based on trust and love and the messy work of rebuilding. Before I left, Lauren handed me a small photo album. I made this for you. It's from the first 7 months. All the things you missed. I opened it. Photos of Lily at the hospital, at home, at her first bath, at her first smile. Moments I'd been excluded from, now preserved and shared. Thank you, I whispered. This means everything. Driving home that night, I felt lighter than I had in months. The road was the same, but I was different. Stronger. More whole. The twist isn't that I won a legal battle. The twist isn't that Lauren finally apologized. The twist is that we both grew up. We both learned that love isn't a finite resource, that Lily could love me and Lauren both, fully and completely, without taking anything away from anyone. We learned that fear makes us do terrible things, but courage can undo them. And we learned that family isn't just about blood or contracts. It's about showing up again and again, even when it's hard. The years that followed were not perfect. There were awkward moments, old wounds that flared up, times when we had to remind each other of the promises we'd made. But we kept showing up. For Lily's birthdays, for holidays, for ordinary Saturdays when she wanted to play with her aunt. Lily is 5 now. She calls me Annie Claire and knows the story of how she grew in my tummy before she came to live with Mommy and Daddy. She thinks it's magical, which it is. She draws pictures of our family, Mommy, Daddy, Lily, and Auntie Claire, all holding hands under a rainbow. It's exactly how it should be. So, did I win? Not in the way I expected. I didn't win a court battle or a legal victory. I won something harder and more valuable. My family. I won back my sister, my niece, my place in their lives. I won the understanding that contracts can protect you, but only love can heal you. The micro-niche here isn't just surrogacy law or family contracts. It's about the terrifying, beautiful work of forgiveness. It's about recognizing that the people we love can hurt us deeply, but that doesn't mean they're monsters. Sometimes they're just scared. Sometimes they're just human. And sometimes, if we're brave enough to keep showing up, we can find our way back to each other. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you loved? Did you find a way back, or did you have to let go? Share your stories in the comments below. Let's talk about forgiveness, about boundaries, about the messy work of loving people even when they hurt us. And if this story of sisters, surrogacy, and second chances resonated with you, share it. Sometimes, the most important stories are the ones about finding our way back to each other. Thanks for listening.